In today's video, I'm going to cover another 80 construction terms that I use or hear on a regular basis. So by the end of this video, I hope you'll be left with, yet again, some new information that will help you understand what others are talking about in the industry or on a job site. So let's go.
Another one.
All right, kicking off this list, we have Addendum. An addendum is a document similar to a construction bulletin, which is issued by a design team during the bidding phase to describe an addition or modification to the contract documents. Addenda become part of the contract documents. Next up, we have AHJ, or Authority Having Jurisdiction. The AHJ, or Authority Having Jurisdiction, refers to the local, state, or federal agency responsible for enforcing building codes, safety regulations, and issuing permits. Then we have allowance. An allowance is a sum of money incorporated into the contract sum in order to cover the cost of a particular scope, which isn't fully described or known in the contract documents. At number 4, we have alternate. An alternate is a specific aspect of scope which is outlined during the bidding phase and to be priced separately from the base bid, which can later be added or deducted from the base bid amount if selected by the owner, providing the owner this option at time of bid and bid award and selection. Moving on, we have approved equal. Architects and engineers will typically outline a basis of design in the specifications, which is essentially the must-use material or equipment the contractor has to utilize. However, they will sometimes allow approved equals. This means the contractor can suggest the use of an alternate material or equipment, which then has to be approved by the design team and/or the owner prior to purchase and install. Okay, now we're looking at Architectural Supplemental Information, or ASI. An ASI is a formal document issued by an architect or engineer to the contractor that provides some clarification, minor changes, or additional information just to clarify the intent of the original construction documents. ASIs are typically used for changes that do not affect the project cost or time, such as specifying a paint color. At number 7, we have base bid. A base bid is a contractor's price submitted for a project scope of work. However, it excludes any additions, deductions, or alternate pricing options. Okay, let's move on to benchmark. Now, a benchmark, which is often referred to as a site control point, is a physical marker somewhere on the job site which does not move or change. It is a confirmed elevation and location marked by a surveying company that the remainder of contractors use to confirm their elevations for the installation of work. Okay, now we have bid leveling. Bid leveling is the process of reviewing bids within the same bid package and is to ensure that the pricing between different contractors is just apples to apples. This is to help ensure that the scope is being priced completely and consistently across the board. All right, a pretty simple one, blocking. Now, blocking is just short pieces of lumber used to fill, join, or reinforce a building structure. Blocking is installed where material is being fastened to a wall to ensure additional support, such as casework uppers, grab bars, etc. Moving on, we have burden. Now, burden refers to the indirect costs of employing a worker beyond their hourly wage, which includes expenses like Social Security, workers' compensation, any health insurance, paid time off, and more. Then we have cash flow. Construction projects typically involve 30, 45, 60-day payment cycles from the time you submit your payment to the time you're paid, sometimes even more. A cash flow is a forecast typically created in an Excel document of expenses such as labor, material, and equipment versus income or payments over time. Cash flows are typically forecasted on a monthly basis and are used to help construction companies and owners understand the ins and outs of payment requirements. Following that, we have closed shop. Now, closed shop was a term used to describe areas of the country where employees were required to be union members as a condition of employment. Closed shops were deemed illegal in 1947 under federal law. We're going to keep going with conceptual estimates. A conceptual estimate is an early cost projection based on limited project data, details, and documents, typically provided to an owner by a contractor or architect to ensure the owner is in alignment with the potential costs prior to the next steps of design and detailed estimates. At number 15, we have constructability. So constructability refers to the ease in which the contract plans and specifications can be executed during the construction phase. Constructability review may influence design modifications during the project's design development phase. Okay, consumables. Construction consumables are expendable materials used up during a project that are not part of the final structure, such as drill bits, saw blades, grinding wheels, fuels, etc. Moving on, we have cost codes. Construction cost codes, or sometimes referred to as phase codes, are numeric identifiers used to categorize and track project expenses like labor, materials, and subcontractors for specific activities. Then we have critical picks. Now, a critical pick in construction is a lift that carries a high risk completed by a crane, often requiring extra planning and safety measures. These lifts are typically defined by exceeding 75% of a crane's lifting capacity, requires one or more crane, or when the load is outside of the operator's view. Then we have another on-site term, cut and fill. Now, cutting and filling is the process of just moving earth from high elevations, which would be considered cuts, to lower elevations considered fills. Then we have daily reports. Now, a daily report is a document filled out by a foreman or a superintendent at the end of every working day on a project or throughout the day. It captures things like weather, types of work activities taking place that day, inspections that took place that day, number of individuals on site, any safety items to record, in addition to many other items. Okay, the Davis-Bacon Act. So the Davis-Bacon Act requires that all contractors and their subcontractors performing federally contracted work in excess of $2,000 to pay no less than the prevailing wage and fringe benefits for that geographic location where the work is being completed. All right, I'll cover prevailing wage later on in this video, but if you've learned anything from this video so far, I'd ask that you take a moment to hit that subscribe button. You'll see more content like this in the future, and you'll help me grow my audience with others interested in construction as well. Okay, getting back to business, we're moving on to dead load and live load. So dead load refers to the weight of the actual structure or building, which includes all permanent components. The live load refers to everything that is essentially movable within the building, such as furniture, people, and any other movable equipment. Now we have DFH, which is short for doors, frames, and hardware. You'll often hear or see doors, frames, and hardware scope abbreviated as DFH, so I'm just throwing it out there for simplicity. Moving on to DNR. Now DNR stands for the Department of Natural Resources, and this is typically applicable to site improvements or related permits where the DNR is involved with stormwater runoff and management and establishing no-build areas such as designated wetlands or protected land. After that, we have draw or payment application. Now, a draw in construction refers to the payment application where a contractor submits a bill to a general contractor or the owner directly for approval of payment, typically on a monthly basis, which is based on work performed or completed to date. Then we have easements. An easement is a legal right for someone to use a portion of another's property for a specific purpose. For instance, public utility companies typically have easements onto other properties for the extent of their underground electric, internet data that make their way into the building. This allows the public utility company to access that portion of land to service those utilities. You typically cannot build on easements without signed approval from the easement holder. Up next is egress. So egress is a continuous, unobstructed path for people to exit a building and reach a public way such as a street in a safe manner. Egress pathways are based on occupant load and other safety code requirements. At number 28, we have EMR. Now, EMR stands for Experience Modification Rate or Rating. which is based on a company's worker compensation claim history to the average of its industry and size. It's essentially a company's safety rating, with number 1 matching the industry average, and any number under 1 is better than the industry average, and anything above 1 is worse than the industry average. After that, we have envelope. Now, the envelope of a building stands for the outer structure, where the waterproofing elements of a building enclose the outside from interior conditioned spaces. Moving on to another site or earthwork term, we have erosion control. Now, erosion control in construction involves the use of barriers or physical controls to prevent soil erosion during the course of a construction project. Next up, we have FF&E, and FF&E is just an abbreviation used to denote furniture, fixtures, and equipment on a construction project. Then we have the term furnish, which is oftentimes found in contracts and in construction. To furnish something means to supply and deliver materials, equipment, or labor to the job site so that they are there ready for use or install. Okay, now we've got a scheduling term with a Gantt schedule. A Gantt schedule is a visual representation of a project timeline using horizontal bars to show tasks against a calendar. Back to our earthwork, we've got grading. Now, grading is the process of reshaping land on a construction project. A site grade is an established point set by a civil engineer in the construction documents that an earthworker would use to establish the height of the reshaped land. All right, green building. Now, green building in construction is essentially the practice of designing, building, and operating structures to be environmentally responsible and resource efficient throughout their entire life cycle. At 36, we have leading edge. Now, in construction, a leading edge is an unprotected or active edge of a roof, floor, or deck. This creates a significant fall hazard and requires workers to be tied off or monitored while the scope is being completed. Okay, let's talk about lean construction. Now, lean construction is a construction methodology that aims at achieving a reliable and predictable workflow while reducing waste on a construction project. There's a lot more that goes into lean, and I will probably make a video of its own in the future. Okay, let's talk about LEED. Now, LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which is an established rating system that assigns points towards material use, construction practices, efficient building design, and more. It's tied to green buildings and sustainable design. All right, one of my favorites is a lessons learned. Now, lessons learned in construction are essentially the process of documenting successes and failures throughout a project, which is often used as a knowledge share to other individuals to prevent similar mistakes from happening or to go about with an approach for a successful operation on the construction site. At number 40, we have the dreaded liquidated damages. Now, liquidated damages in construction is a pre-agreed sum of money, typically a daily rate, that a contractor has to pay to the owner for each day of delay past the contractual completion date.
Oh no.
At 41, we have markup. Now, markup is a percentage added to the total cost of a project, scope, or change order to cover things such as insurance, bond, and fee. After that, we have master format. Now, master format is the standard for organizing construction specifications established by the Construction Specifications Institute, or CSI. Then we have meeting minutes. Meeting minutes are the official written and recorded document of what was discussed, decided, and assigned during a construction project meeting. Another construction scheduling term is milestone. A construction milestone are critical dates or activities within the construction schedule with usually 0 days established that are used to plan and track progress towards, such as completing footings and foundations, enclosing the structure, or substantial completion. All right, now we have NTE, or not to exceed. An NTE in construction is a contract or change order that means not to exceed a certain price. In this contract type, a contractor's expenditure and scope of work are limited to this value or under this value unless they are approved to exceed the set dollar amount before moving forward with the work. Then we have OCO and SCO. Now, I talked about COs, which are change orders, in my last video. OCO just stands for an owner change order, and SCO stands for a subcontractor change order. Now we're going to talk about everybody's favorite day on a construction site, occupancy, which essentially allows an owner to open the doors for its intended use after construction is completed and inspections have all been passed. At 48, we have open shop, which is the complete opposite of closed shop. Open shop in construction refers to a workplace where the employees are not required to join a union as a condition of employment. Then we have prefabrication, which is a construction method that involves manufacturing building components or entire structures off-site in a factory, a warehouse, or another controlled environment, which is then to be installed or erected more simply once it's delivered on site. Moving on to prequalification. Now, prequalification is the process of evaluating a contractor's ability to complete a project before they submit a bid. Next up, we have procurement, which I've talked about at length in previous videos, and I'll just hit it again. Procurement is a process of acquiring all necessary goods, services, and resources for a construction project, including materials, equipment, and labor. More often than not, it's specifically referred to when talking about material in construction. All right, I said we'd return to prevailing wage. Now, prevailing wage in construction is a requirement for public works projects to pay workers the average hourly wage and benefits for the local area. Federal and state laws mandate these wages, which then are set by the government based on data for different job classifications in counties. After that, we have purchase orders. A construction purchase order, or PO for short, is a legally binding agreement or document issued by a contractor to a vendor for materials or equipment, which doesn't typically require site labor. A subcontract is similar. The only difference is that a subcontractor usually has associated labor involved. All right, the programming phase. Now, the programming phase is a pre-design stage where the project's goals, needs, and criteria are defined before the actual design starts. Usually, a team of architects working with stakeholders, sometimes some contractor involvement, and then they move to the actual design stages. Now, here's every contractor's favorite part of the job, progress payment. It's a scheduled payment or partial payment made during the work process to cover costs of the work completed or material delivered to the site, coming after the submission of a draw or a pay application. Cost is submitted on that monthly basis, and then the progress payment is made based on the contract payment terms. Up next, we have redline drawings, which is just another term for as-built. A redline drawing is when a contractor marks up a construction drawing with a red pen or digitally to indicate how material was actually installed, showing deviations from the actual construction drawings. After that, we have renderings. Now, a rendering is a photorealistic 3D image produced from modeling software or those 2D sets of drawings that we see that reflects really what the project is going to look like or an area of the project upon completion. All right, we got another payment term with retainage. Retainage is a portion of a contractor's payment which is withheld until the project is substantially complete to ensure that the work is finished properly and according to the contract terms. Retainage is typically 5 or 10% of the billed amount on a monthly basis. Another estimating or pricing term, we have ROM, which stands for rough order of magnitude, and is just a rough estimate of costs and time when a detailed estimate cannot yet be completed due to insufficient information or time. After that, we've got another site term with rough-in. Now, rough-in is the initial construction phase where electrical, plumbing, and HVAC systems are installed within the building's framework, but before the walls are closed up with drywall or other materials. At 61, we have scoping. Now, scoping is the process of a contractor reviewing a subcontractor's bid to ensure that the scope of work on the bid matches the requirements needed of the actual scope of work. And then directly following that, we have a scope gap. A scope gap is a specific aspect of scope required to be complete in the contract documents that was missed or not captured as part of the scoping process by a contractor or a subcontractor. All right, now we have SDS or safety data sheets. These are documents that provide information about hazardous chemicals or products used on construction projects, including the properties, hazards, safe handling procedures, and most importantly, what to do in an emergency if you come in contact with those products. Then we have section cuts, which I do talk about in my drawing review videos. This is just an imaginary vertical slice through a building on a set of drawings, used to reveal interior structure or walls or elevations, relationships between spaces, and the construction details that are not essentially visible on the plan view. At 65, we have shell. Now, the shell of a building is essentially the basic structure, including the foundation, framing, structural components, exterior walls, and roof. After that, we have slack or float, and these are just scheduling terms that refer to the amount of time and activity can be delayed without impacting the project's overall end date. All right, now we have staging. So staging can have two meanings, such as setting up temporary platforms and scaffolding for workers, but I more often hear it referred to as a designated area on site for storing materials and equipment for upcoming install or future install. A term we more often hear in residential construction or large-scale wood or timber construction is stick-built. Now, stick-built is essentially an on-site or site-built construction, piece by piece, using pieces of lumber or sticks. Following that, we have subcontract. Now, a subcontract is a secondary contract where the general contractor or a larger contractor hires another company to perform a specific part of the original contract's work or scope. All right, we're getting close to the end of this list, and close to the end of a project, we have substantial completion. And substantial completion is just the stage in which a construction project is finished enough that the owner can use it for its intended purpose. After that, we have substitution. Now in construction, a substitution is the process of replacing a specified material, product, or method with an alternative, which is oftentimes used to save costs, improve lead times, or even enhance performance of that product. Then we have TAB, or testing, adjusting, and balancing. Now, TAB is the process in which an HVAC system is fine-tuned to ensure that it performs according to the engineer's design specifications. All right, now we have Toolbox Talks, which are just short safety meetings each morning led by a foreman or a superintendent, which are to discuss job site specific safety hazards, safe work practices, and other relevant topics. All right, we got a fun one with topping out. Now, topping out is when the uppermost steel beam or member is installed in place, signifying that a building has reached its full height and that the structure is essentially complete. It's often accompanied with a site ceremony or celebration of individuals involved with the project that'll come out and actually sign this structural beam or member prior to it being lifted in place, and it's celebrated as an accomplished milestone. Then we have turnkey. Now, turnkey is just a project that is delivered completely finished and is ready for immediate use. The term turnkey essentially comes from you hand over the keys to the owner and then they can open up their building, walk in, and just use it. After that, we have 2, 3, and 6 week look-ahead schedules. Now, these are detailed schedule breakdowns to forward look at the next handful of weeks or months to specifically focus on upcoming activities and possible constraints that may prevent those activities from happening versus looking years down the road or further months down the road in the overall schedule. At 77, we have unforeseen conditions. Now, these are unexpected issues that arise on a project site, such as hidden physical conditions or hazards underground that would differ from what was anticipated. Unforeseen conditions are not accounted for in the original schedule, design, budget, and they can often lead to project delays or increased costs. Following that, we have Uniformat. Now, Uniformat is just a standard for classifying building specifications, cost estimating, and cost analysis. Then we have Unit Price. In construction, a unit rate or a unit price is the price for a single measurable aspect of work, such as the cost per square foot of flooring or the linear foot price of installing a pipe or something similar. And we've made it to the end of the list with VIF, or Verify in Field. VIF is a construction and a design term that means measurements and details from a drawing must be checked or verified against the actual site conditions before that work begins. All right, I hope you made it through the whole video, and thank you if you did. Again, if you're not currently subscribed, please do hit that subscribe button. It helps grow the channel and broadens the audience for others who may benefit from this information. All right, hope you enjoyed the cowboy hat as well. And as always, be better, build better, and bye for now.